Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Jeffrey Charles Hardy. And I'm so happy he said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
I couldn't be better because I'm talking with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I would love to introduce you to the audience. Of course, you are a 50-year veteran in healthcare planning and design and the president of the Care for Peace Foundation. You have worked with over 220 hospitals and developed healthcare systems globally. You are the author of the Care for Peace manifesto, focusing on sustainable human development and addressing global existential crisis. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Jeffrey Charles. Let's say this.
Thank you.
Wow. So, my first question goes to you. What inspired you to transition from healthcare system development to founding the Care for Peace Foundation?
Oh, the best question at the beginning. Good idea. Um, well, mostly because I'm a planner and I've been planning for the last 50 years, planning healthcare in different countries of the world, Vietnam, Nigeria, Kenya, and most recently in Myanmar, Burma. But pre before that, working all over the United States for some of the biggest corporations in the world, actually, for healthcare, like Columbia HCA and Kaiser Foundation International. Um, but my planning background kept popping into my head, saying, "Well, maybe you can help plan the next evolution of the human evolution, because I look at the human evolution in three stages. The first one is the first human evolution that began 2.5 million years ago and ended sometime around the mid 60s when mutually assured destruction. We suddenly realized that we'd conquered the world. The earth is round and we'd been just about everywhere. Humanity had basically conquered nature. And so these little triggers kept happening in my head saying, no, there's a problem here because the first human evolution is over. Where are we now? And we're in the suspended human evolution, but what's what's next? And what I'm saying is, from a planner's perspective, we need to start planning what I'm calling the third stage of human evolution, which is the second human evolution. This is not geography. This is not the Holocene. This is not something where we look at how humans are affecting the geography, the earth, wind, and skies. This is just looking at humanity, our Homo sapiens, and how we have evolved to this moment, and what do we need to do from now on. So it's strictly from a planner's point of view that I started making the jump. As you say, it was this leap of I wonder what I could do, because I wasn't hearing any planning terminology from any of the organizations except, Bill and Melinda Gates, World Health Organization, United Nations. They're planning politics, or they're planning some niche, but they aren't planning from a global perspective, which we really need to do. That's what I did in healthcare for healthcare facilities, designing new healthcare facilities. I'd say to everybody, back up and look at what it is you think you need. And from that point on, design whatever it is you think you need. And that's where it kind of gelled with me that we need to plan the second human evolution.
Oh, I love that. I never heard it before in the context of healthcare. Sure, you talk about peace, and I think it's also about creating an order and structure.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm. When you talk about planning, right? So my next question is, how does the Care for Peace manifesto propose we tackle the existential crisis facing humanity today?
existential crises need to start what's the word, existentially, okay, existentially. And what that means is it's got to start with you. It has to start with the individual, and then it needs to go out from the individual. So at an individual level, when I was a hospital corpsman trainee in the United States Coast Guard 50 years ago, taking care of seamen who were coming back to America from the Mekong Delta and from the Vietnam War, I experienced something that I had never experienced before. And it was the feeling I got from caring. I was caring for these guys, and they were grateful. They looked me in the eyes. They'd say, "Thank you so much." And they were being helped. And at the end of the day, and even in the moment where I was caring, I felt this feeling that was completely different than happiness or, even contentment. It was what I called peace. And that's where the idea of care for peace 50 years ago started. And then I says, wow, I've got something new. And I started after the Coast Guard, I started working in hospitals and I met nurses all over the world. And I'll tell you, nurses already know what it means to care for peace. So, care for peace was the existential beginning of what you have to have if we want to take this existential concept to a global level. It's the core, it's the basis, it's the foundation of our discussion about what the second human evolution should be.
Yes, I love what you said about peace within and that it all starts with us, right? And then the aspect of caring as well, and nurses all over the world. So it is about worldwide. Would you say it is a movement you create?
You know what? It's already in the spirit of humans. So, part of what we have to do is recognize what's already there. What's already here in our hearts is to care for peace. And when I say peace, I'm not talking about the time after the cannons stop, the wars are over, or the time between wars. That's not peace. Nor is sitting up on top of a mountain looking down in the valley while you're sitting there with your arms crossed and thinking ethereal thoughts at the people down in the valley. They're suffering. That can't be peace. We've got to have active care for dynamic peace. And that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that is different, but not new at all. We have to look at our own ability to care, our own process of caring, and how that helps us attain a wonderful feeling called peace.
Absolutely. When you were talking before, then I thought it's also the feeling of fulfillment.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that once we have the feeling of peace, that's where the comfort of feeling that we have fulfilled our purpose. So when you say fulfillment, I think about what are we trying to fulfill? We're fulfilling our purpose, the reason why we exist. And once again, that's right here at the beginning, which is you and me, and where we start individually moving towards the ability to care for peace, because then once we recognize that, we can start looking at our community, the people we know, our friends, our relatives, our communities, our regions, our states, our countries, the world. And that we have to bring this feeling of care for peace to the discussion of what it means to care for peace in the second human evolution.
I understand. Most of the people are not living their purpose. They don't even know that they have one. And therefore they are not aligned or in harmony, or they don't feel peace. What would be your recommendation as first step to discover that what is already there?
Oh, you just said it. It's what's already there. Just recognize what's already there. That's the first start. And the second thing is to talk about it. You see what you're doing, Carolyn, is something that I think is the secret of the communication that we have to have on a global level. You're a global podcaster. And I've seen your LinkedIn, I've seen your pages, I've seen what you're doing. I've listened to two of your podcasts. I mean, you are a global podcast
Yes.
and podcaster. And so you are hosting this discussion, and I think that the discussion begins with caring for peace, which you already do. You already care for peace. Everything that you do, I hear it already in what you're doing. So I think the first thing is to recognize your own caring for peace. And then the second thing is to do exactly what you're doing. Talk about it, discuss it.
I love that. So there's nothing more to do. Just be yourself, talk about peace, feel the align. I would say alignment. When you are aligned with your purpose, you live your purpose. You
I
can
like
also
that.
say you are at peace, or yeah, at peace. I think it's a place in your heart. Peace, right? At
Yes,
peace. The
yes,
inner peace, it all starts with you, with me, within.
yes,
The kingdom
right,
of heaven is within, or something
yes,
like that. I
sure.
heard about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are. Um, that's the beginning. The beginning is the recognition and talking about it. Then my background, my career, 50 years of actual planning steps in. That's when we start looking at what is the process, because the process is the solution to getting to the second human evolution. The process begins with what I call the pre planning phase. And you and I are right now in the pre planning phase. It's the recognition, it's the discussion, it's okay, let's stand back and look at the world. Let's look at humanity. Don't look at the animals. I love dogs. I mean, I'd say include the dogs in this, but the bottom line is we're in charge. Stand back and look at the evolution of humans from 2.5 million years ago to the end of the first human evolution, and realize that what we're in now is this suspended human evolution where we need to develop and search for the right tools to use to plan the second human evolution. We're not planning right now. We're pre-planning. Pre-planning, meaning that we're trying to find the right tools. It's like if you're a carpenter, you say, "Well, let's see what tools are I going to need to use to build this house." And when it comes to healthcare planning, I have to say, "Well, what's the tools?" Well, one of the first things that I have to do with my healthcare climate clients who say I want to build a $1 billion hospital somewhere. I say, well, let's look at what the tools are, and a lot of times it's getting the right people at the table, because you've got to have architects, engineers, but you also have to have hospital people who know what's going on in the hospital so that they can be a part of it. And then very importantly, you have to have the community people. You have to have representatives from government, from local politic. You need to be able to bring in the right people to begin this 2 year, sometimes 3 year journey of planning. And then you have to discuss how you're going to communicate. I mean, there's a whole bunch of tools that we assume will occur without our planning them, and that doesn't work. I've got more failures than I can tell you about that I have been involved in, where we didn't pre-plan it long enough. We did not use this wonderful time to think about what the tools are that we need and really what it is that we want to build. A lot of times they don't need a hospital. I'll go in and I'll say, well, you really need to do something with your clinics. And what happened in Myanmar is I went over there the first time to help them design a new hospital. It was a Western style hospital. Well, guess what? They didn't need a Western style hospital. I went to the rural areas, 53 million people, of which 50 million live in just unbelievable deep rural areas. So so rural. You would not believe it. You can't even get to most of these villages because they just have trails. And I know that because I had to take an airplane and then take a boat, and then the boat has to go 3.5 hours to a place called Chittagong, and then we had to get out of the boat. And we had to hike an hour and a half to the village where we built. We, as in the Care for Peace Foundation, built a community development and health center prototype that was something that the government helped us with and we helped the government with, more important. And the people in the village helped design this process because all the talk we did and all the pre planning we did was more important than the actual planning itself because by the time a year and a half went by, and we were still talking. We were drawing pictures on blackboards and on whiteboards and saying, well, what we need to do is this. And gee, if we need water, where are we going to get the water? Is it from a well? Is it, well, they said, well, why don't we build a pond? So they built a pond so that they could get water for not just the clinic, but also for the people in the village. So it's incredible the wonderful process of pre-planning and how it dovetails into the ultimate process of actual planning, which those are my tools. And in the book, which I wrote for mostly graduates of college, graduates of high school people, it is a nonfiction book to care for peace is meant to share some of those pre planning thoughts so that we can also develop some of the pre planning tools and then look at how we're going to get into the actual planning process itself.
Wow, it's all about planning. I love
Yes.
that. Yes, what you said. And of course, I have another question. Can you share a memorable experience from your international work that shaped your vision for global healthcare development?
Well, one of the first things that happened about 10 years ago, before I worked in Myanmar, was when I was invited by a third party to consult to the governor of River State in Nigeria. And so we drove a long, convoluted way to get to the governor's mansion, and I was talking with the governor about healthcare. And at the time, we were thinking about building a maternal and child health hospital right in the middle of Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt is the capital city of River State, and it took me probably an hour and a half to go half a mile from where we were staying at a hospital, excuse me, at a hotel to get to the governor's mansion. And I'm sitting there saying, this is unbelievable. This town is just completely one big traffic jam. But he was telling me about the problem that they were also having in Nigeria itself, a much larger picture of problem where you have the tribal and the cultural, the ethnic animosities. You have Boko Haram. You've got the Christians at the necks of the Muslims, and the Muslims at the necks of the Christians, and it was one hotbed, one tinderbox, and I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking about the problem with getting to a place where we're going to build a maternal and child health, and I says, look, why don't we forget about the idea of building a hospital? Why don't we build small clinics in the periphery of Port Harcourt, out in the countryside, where people can actually access it? And I got a crazy idea. Why don't we get professionals from the tribal and the ethnic and the cultural area and get those professionals, those healthcare professionals, to all work together in these tiny little clinics, and then they can show the rest of the city, the town, the villages, what it means to care for peace. Ah, care. Ah, peace. So that was the big aha moment. I was, and it's funny because At the time, I didn't realize that my revelation 40 years ago, at that point, as a hospital corpsman in the Coast Guard, would pop into my head and just become what became a song that became the Care for Peace anthem that was sung by some really wonderful local people. It's on our website, careforpeace.org. If you want to listen to it, it's beyond awesome. I mean, they took it away, and it's also and then it became the name of our foundation, the Care for Peace Foundation. And then after the military in Myanmar booted out the government, and our plan to build 250 more of these wonderful, very successful community development and health centers, I didn't have anything else to do. So guess what? I wrote a book. That's where that's what happened when that, that's that's the end of your question. That's how the healthcare planning process and how it evolved into a global idea, and then from that global idea, how did it get into a book and into a song? But it started, as I said right at the beginning, it started right here in my
Yeah.
heart. It started with me. The existential place, the origin of caring for peace.
I love that. It started with you, with an idea, and you accepted the idea and turned it into action, into a workable plan, so to say. I love that so much. I got it from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the business Bible. You know this book, everyone knows this book, of course. And yeah, thank you for our interview. I know now about your goals, of course. I don't have to ask, or do you have next projects?
My next projects are more of the same. I need to keep talking because it's important for me to listen to your questions and then internalize those questions. I mean, writing a book is one thing, but to be able to really articulate what people want to hear about, that comes from your questions. So I need to do this a lot more. My next step goal, is to be able to speak at conferences, speak. I'm used to standing on the stage for the healthcare industry. So I've got no problem standing on a stage. I think that most people might have a problem. How do we kick this guy off the stage? So, so I really want to stand on the stage and share what it is that we're talking about with, with the screen behind me, sharing some of the principles, some of my experiences, so that people can see what it is, and then eventually to be able to get a little bit more recognized as the person who is trying to bring the planning process to human evolution.
Oh, yes, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And please reach out to Jeffrey. He's amazing. He has information not many people have, and he's willing to share, of course. And he wants to rock your stage. So please invite Jeffrey to speak about care for peace, right? And now it's time for your final thoughts to the audience, please.
Well, my final thoughts should be the first sentence of the book. In the book, To Care for Peace, a global mandate to secure the second human evolution in perpetuity. First sentence. To care for peace may not be the secret of life, but it is as close to the secret of living there is. To care for peace may not be the secret of life, but it's as close to the secret of living there is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was a great interview.
Thank you,
And
Caroline.
see you in the next episode.